A few years ago, I turned a blank wall into this huge built-in unit for one of my best friends. But let's back up. This is the wall that we were working with. We started by figuring out how wide we wanted the built-in, and then I removed the baseboard where it would go. And then I added a base for the cabinet to sit on, securing it into the studs behind the wall. I used 3/4 inch sanded plywood for the cabinet boxes, and I just built them myself with pocket holes. This is my friend's husband, Kevin. I don't usually have a helper during my projects, but I take advantage of it when I do. And then I used 1x2 primed pine to magically transform this plywood into what was going to be cabinets. You can also use primed MDF. She wanted to have drawer storage in the middle and then cabinet storage on the left and right sides. A lot of the times I make my drawers out of 1/2 inch plywood, but these drawers are so big that I use 3/4 inch plywood. I cut the plywood down to size using my circular saw, and then I use my table saw to put grooves in the plywood so that way the bottom can sit inside of the sides. This will create a super sturdy drawer. I got the drawer slides installed on the inside of the cabinet and then on the drawers themselves and got them put into place. Here I'm using edge banding. This hides the plywood edge so it looks like a solid piece of wood, which is a lot prettier than that ugly raw plywood edge. Next, it was time to build the doors and the drawer fronts. I used 1x3 primed pine for this and then brown board for the center. I got the hinges installed and then the doors installed before I got them painted just to make sure I wasn't going to have to modify them at all to fit perfectly since these are inset. Once I knew that these were going to fit perfectly, I got them painted and installed. Like I said earlier, I used 1x3s for the doors in the bottom drawer, but for the top 2 drawers, I just use a solid piece of plywood and I edge band the side before painting them. Then it was time to make the countertop. I've made several pieces of furniture with this herringbone pattern, and my friend's a big fan, so that's what I did for the countertop here. The way I do this is attach 1x3s to a piece of plywood or MDF with brad nails and wood glue, letting the edges hang off, and then I trim the edges off with either a circular saw or a table saw, and this is how it looks. Isn't that beautiful? I also attached a 1x3 to the edges for a more finished look. And then it was time to start on the top of this built-in. Here I'm using corner clamps to attach the 3/4 inch plywood together, and then I put a piece of brown board on the back that we had already put wallpaper on. We figured it would be easier to put the wallpaper on before versus after. I don't have it videoed, but those cabinets are attached to the studs behind the wall. And then here I'm getting all the shelves and the shelf supports stained in the garage so that way I don't bring the stain smell inside of the house. At least not as much as it would be if I stained inside. If you pay attention to the countertop, I've got blue tape laid down and that marks where the studs are behind the wall, so I knew where to put the screws for the shelves. I used 1x2s for the shelf supports, and then we attached the wood on top with my brad nailer into the 1x2s. And then next up, we couldn't let this just be a boring squared off cabinet, so the middle piece, I cut an arch out of brown board and I attached it with my brad nailer into the plywood behind. This is actually pretty simple to do. And then I'm adding a face frame on the top using 1x2 primed pine for the vertical pieces. And then here on the top, I used 1x4 primed pine. I didn't use 1x2s here because I wanted it to show below the trim that I was going to put up to bring these cabinets to the ceiling. And here's that trim that I was referring to. All this was pretty easy. I just brad nailed it into place. And then it was time for paint. Don't worry, that arch wasn't ever going to stay brown. I've done this at my house and it turned out so good that she wanted it at her house too. And you can see from this view, we didn't put a lower shelf in the middle because she wanted to be able to stand up larger items there. And at this point, she hadn't seen it done, so I went and found a little bit of decor for the reveal. And as a reminder, this is where we started. It was just a big blank wall that she had a big vision for. And luckily, she knew somebody that could bring it to life for her. What do you think? Is this something that you would want in your house, or do you like furniture that's not built in so you can move it around?